All right, looks like I'm live once again, except this time I'm going to try to focus a bit more on answering questions, and in the meantime, I'll just fill in by talking about new products and things of that nature. And hopefully, my iPad doesn't die. The sun's actually out, so be a little bit more mobile in my apartment at this moment in time as I'm walking to my bathroom because no one is even yet to show up yet at this moment. So I'm pretty much just talking to myself, and hopefully, people watching this later will just fast forward. But in the meantime, I'm going to answer a question that I received via email earlier today to sort of fill in the gap here while we're waiting for people to show up. Let's see where this question is at. Someone sent it in via email, but honestly, it seemed easier to answer on a chat rather than trying to write it out, via email. And of course, now I can't even find it in my email. But basically, the question was that in the past, I had. Here we go. Hey, how's it going, Juliana? I'm going to answer a question that someone sent in via email just while we wait for people to show up on the chat and whatever. So I practiced a 15-minute Qigong routine for the last 6 years and learned off of Grandmaster whatever. I heard you say in a QA it's not needed to get healthy, which I found shocking, as you seem to be a huge advocate of it at one point. I'm curious to understand why you have this point of view now, if you wouldn't mind sharing. So yeah, that is a correct assertion. I did say in many live Q&As that I think the vast majority of the time Qigong and internal arts are a complete waste of time for people, and they'd be better off doing regular forms of exercise, because doing the thing is, doing internal arts, of which Qigong is in a big family, it's not like walking or going for a run or any really other thing that we can quite think of, or just doing a routine or doing a specific set amount of time really doesn't matter at all. The most that someone would ever get out of that is a little bit of relaxation and a little bit of just kind of stimulating their nervous system, which, to be quite honest, you can stimulate your nervous system by just touching yourself. And that will be way quicker, way more efficient, way more effective than whatever Qigong routines people are doing. Because I mean, if we went into the whole cultural revolution and the modernization and just how everything has changed and been bastardized and all these things, it's a big conversation, which I won't really get into. But the point of it is that with these types of arts and things, you really only get out of it what you put into it. And just doing some exercise really has nothing to do with it. And actually doing internal exercises and internal arts is some of the dumbest and biggest wastes of time that a person could do, because how little a person would actually get out of it. And there's just way, if you had only 15 minutes to exercise, you're better off going for a walk, a jog, a swim, a sauna, like anything else in life. And the other thing is that I said that internal arts usually made people actually less healthy over time, because basically people are already doing these things typically because they're weak or they're stressed. So typically how people will accomplish their anti-stress is by basically making themselves weaker, and what I mean is actually what is happening to the inside of their body and their energy system, because it's this weird thing with how you feel, in that you can't really trust it that much, because you might think you feel better, but you could actually objectively be less healthy. I mean, a great example is everyone probably feels better when they've had a couple of drinks of alcohol. But that doesn't mean that's healthier, that just means they feel better. Drug addicts obviously feel better on drugs, but that doesn't mean that they are actually better or healthier or that it all makes sense. That just means they feel better. So rule number one with an internal artist is generally that your feelings are kind of irrelevant. Of course, you have to notice them and pay attention, but you can't really trust them, and you shouldn't solely trust them, uh, especially when it comes to something as intricate and detailed as this. Because when we start actually talking about what Qigong is and can be, we start talking about, like, oh, well, I practice high level quantum computing, for 15 minutes a day. It's like, no, that's not a thing. Like, just to even get to the point to be able to do this high level of math or programming requires decades of preparation and foundation to achieve the skill set to be able to do the thing, which you are obviously not able to do before you have done all this groundwork. And because if you are actually starting to modulate and work with the inside of your body, how it functions, obviously there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of room for error, and ways to mess it up, which is what people do. And I would say very confidently 99% of what is available on YouTube, on the internet, in books is largely incorrect. But it probably won't hurt people because there's no potency, there's no real life to it. There's nothing other than someone's imagination and their forceful exertion of their mind on their nervous system. So they can cause some damage that way or some good that way, kind of, but it's pretty small compared to what is actually happening. So that is pretty much it. And I don't think those arts are really that useful for people unless they're willing to find a really great teacher and train 2, 3, 4 hours a day every day for a decade, because that's typically what is actually required and historically what has been required for anyone to actually have skill. And that for some reason this just all sounds weird to people and they don't really understand. Um, but it's like if we were going to talk about being a billionaire, then I was like, look, the way to be a billionaire is just like do these little movements and do that 10 minutes a day, and then you'll be a billionaire. No one in their right mind would be like, you know what, that makes total sense. No, because there's always a chain of causality. So unless a person can explain clearly and efficiently and exactly what that chain of causality is, from point A to point B to point C, all the way to the end result or the manifestation, and they can explain the worldview of which that causation chain comes from. They can understand the progression through that causation chain. They can understand the pros and the cons of the causation chain and slight tweaks that may or may not be required, and 10 other things that I could list. Unless a person can accurately speak to all of those things, then it's very obvious they have no clue what they're actually talking about. And that's kind of why I said what I said and really what it comes down to. And if someone is saying, oh, it's moving your energy, it's opening your channels, it's helping blah, 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 that's a load of shit. And you should be like, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And like I said, move on with your life and find something better to do, because it seems like unless you have all the time in the world and you're going to live forever, then sure, waste time and energy, go for it. But personally, I've unfortunately wasted a lot of time with shitty teachers and shitty delusions that I'd had. Oh, I can figure it out on my own. Oh, I got this. It's like, no, no, that's not really how it works. But have fun. So hopefully that answers that question, because it's a bit of a lengthy, big one, but I try to be somewhat brief and concise. And I apologize if it sounds as harsh, because for some reason statements such as that hurt people's feelings, because they have this idea that everyone's right and everything's relative and there's no fixed anything, but that's all complete malarkey and complete nonsense. And if they're speaking from that point of view, you know they have no skill, they have no real understanding, because real understanding and real skill comes down to understanding causation chains and working with them diligently and consistently over long periods of time. That's it. So yeah, there we go. We can finish that question. What foods replenish Jing? Well, I highly recommend watching my other video on this channel called "What is Jing," where I basically say that the common understanding that people have of this principle is not correct and is completely wrong, uh, unless you're like a kindergartner or a preschooler in Chinese medicine, because it's like what you teach a preschooler is completely wrong compared to what you would teach like anyone at a higher level. But you have to start somewhere. So where people start with their understanding of Jing is, yeah, that preschool ridiculous level, but past that it's not true at all, like at all. So I tried to introduce a little bit more of an advanced, larger context of that concept in that video. Um, so I would highly recommend watching that. The other thing is when people talk about Jing, usually what they mean is kidney chi. They don't actually mean Jing, because Jing is this huge concept, and it talks about kidney chi. But anyways, to answer your actual question based on what you actually mean, basically it would be things like meat, things like organs, bone marrow, animal products, root vegetables, beets, things of that nature, which would be very nutrient dense and help to build blood, which is more by what you mean, and what the results would be is what these things would do. But also, people have to really understand that there's no variable in isolation. Like on an extreme example, there's people that have an immaculate diet, but they're still insanely unhealthy. They're neurotic. They worry about everything. They're so uptight. Like all these other things, or maybe they don't sleep, or they're chronically inflamed. Whatever, because the way you eat is obviously important, but also the way you breathe, the way you move, the way you sleep, the state of your relationships. So, for example, let's say you're mass dosing the most potent tonic herbs. You are eating the best foods. You know, you're doing 39 coffee enemas every morning. But then every time you see another person, you go into fight or flight and panic or shut down or get angry or be a total dickhead or something. Then so in some ways you're kind of negating a lot of the benefit that you would have derived from those things, because now your body is having this extreme other chemical reaction to have to deal with. So at a certain point it's difficult to speak about things in isolation, but the more sort of balance and rhythm comes into play with all these other variables, then the more you get out of everything. Meaning, if you actually sleep properly, move well, start to breathe better, and generally feel a bit more balanced, then you make changes, whether it's taking an herb or a supplement or eating certain things, then you actually will get a bit more out of it. Because the old adage is you're not what you eat, you're what you absorb. So you can eat all the best food in the world, but if you're not absorbing, then it's not really that useful. It's just expensive shit. Piss. Ultimately. So yeah, but I highly recommend watching that video. Next question says, are you familiar with John Chang? Yes, I am quite familiar with that character. That's not his real name, by the way. And there's a lot of complete fake and smoke and mirrors with that guy, but he is or was very skilled and was a real person, real practitioner. Everything he did on camera was real. It's just his name and location and a lot of other things were kind of fudged to keep people off his tracks. But I am familiar with that. I'm familiar with that system and what it is and what it does to a certain degree, obviously. not to any advanced or extreme degree, but in very basic introductory ways. So yeah. So yeah, I'm mostly gonna answer questions, but I think I can chime in and talk about other products and stuff. because I just launched a few new products this week. Did I? No, not yet. So I just launched black ginger extract. I think I launched that like last week. And then I'm gonna launch the black maca extract. Um, I think the black maca extract, I should launch it next week. So that should be cool. Let me see. And then I think I launched like 4 new teas. Sorry, I'm just looking at my website right now, seeing what's even on there. Then I was supposed to launch a new site, but it did not happen yet. Let's see here. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so I think I have like I marked the wild rosebuds back in stock, the pure bud wild chrysanthemums, the black ginger, the black maca should be coming up next week or this weekend probably. I put up the Lao Banjong Sheng Puer from 2006, which is awesome. 2019 Lichon Oolong and a 2019 Oriental Beauty. And then I also have the 280s teas up there as well. I'm out of stock on some of the incense right now, just because like coronavirus put a damper on shipping for a while, so I'll have to wait another couple weeks till we're gonna be able to get that shipped out. So let's see. I really enjoy the Lao Banjong. Is there anything else like it? I have a 90s gushu or old tree cake that I'm also going to be selling on the site in the next month or so. That is kind of like the Lao Banjong, but just older and more aged, because the Lao Banjong is 2006. This one's from 1990. So it's got another, I don't know, 16 or something years on it in terms of aging, so it's a lot darker, has more camphor-y sort of aged flavors, but it still has all the thickness and sweetness and mellowness and brewing power and body high of the Lao Banjong. Like I said, it's just more aged. And I already have people buying cakes of that. So it's a really awesome tea. I sent some samples out for people and they were pretty blown away. And we're pretty much immediately like, can I get a cake of that? I'm like, for sure. So I'll do that, and I have plans this year to just keep adding more teas and keep really expanding out those offerings so that by the end of the year we have a pretty significant tea selection there, and pretty much all the ones that I have on there I'll be able to stock all the time. Whereas in the past I had teas that were kind of in and out, but now I have ones that I can have a good supply of and keep them coming so that they'll be able to be around for quite a while. But the Lao Banjong is quite nice, and especially for the price, is pretty insane. I really love the Agar 35. Yeah, I have to agree with that sentiment quite strongly. It's such a good formula, and yeah, I mean it's those game-changing, life-changing type of formula. And if you have the capsules, be sure to actually open them up into a little bit of hot water and drink it that way. That'll be a lot more noticeable in the effects. So definitely do that if you're not already. What next question? What do you think about this Nofap movement? It's been a while since I have paid attention to it at all. But in general, I think it's kind of dumb, honestly. But on the flip side, I can see the benefit for people. Some people need like to go to an extreme like that in order to change a habit or break a pattern. But I think it's on a larger scale, it's a bit tragic that people's sexuality is so tied to a screen, because ultimately Nofap is usually just about not beating it to porn. I mean, 8 or 9 times out of 10, that's really what it is these dudes are just beating it to porn excessively. Um, and then going to the stream, oh, now I'm doing Nofap and I'm saving my seed, and it's like, whatever. Again, it's just another one of those things where if you're really unhealthy and you're really kind of messed up inside, then jumping to these extremes, I'm going to jack off 6 times a day. Now I'm going to do no fap. That's basically showing you that you're not healthy to begin with. But eventually, once you actually do get healthier, then you realize that there is just a natural rhythm to that thing, and never ejaculating is not that healthy. But obviously, doing it excessively is not very beneficial as well. And so people are better off just using a bit more common sense. And I think honestly, people are sometimes hypersexualized, and it's just because their minds are so agitated, and they're so just addicted to stimuli, and their existence is kind of like a masturbatory experience where it's like, oh, I need this food, oh yeah, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna beat it to porn, oh yeah, now I'm gonna play video games, oh so good, now I'm gonna listen to music, oh fuck yeah, or like, now I'm gonna watch this movie, oh fuck yeah, I'm getting off on this movie. And it's just like their whole existence is kind of like this masturbatory roller coaster, chemical, whatever. And it's just kind of like, this just sounds a very unpleasant way to live. And to go off the loop, people talk about the word dukkha, right? From Buddhism and from Hinduism, this philosophical concept of people translate it as suffering. But basically, it's not really suffering in the way that people think. It's more like you're fucking disturbed. Like people are really, really, really disturbed all the time, externally and internally, but mostly internally. They're really disturbed. They're so disturbed that they're living mostly in disassociation, disembodiment, chemical addiction, and so many other things. And this is the normal sort of existence. Like pumping yourself in front of the TV 8 hours a day or 4 hours a day, that's pretty disassociative, pretty disembodied, and you're only watching it because it's giving you this chemical ups and downs. Like if you watch TV and you felt absolutely nothing, you probably wouldn't watch it. Which, to be honest, I don't really watch TV or listen to music or movies or any of that shit anymore, because for that reason I don't feel anything from it. Very rarely will I even feel the slightest tinge of any movement or stimulation or whatever. Sometimes I almost like am forcing myself to do it because I'm like, all right, well, I need to fucking chill out for a second and not do all these other things. Maybe I'll watch TV, and then it's like, oh, this is fucking boring. So I can, I've been on both sides. I've been on the complete masturbatory existence, and then now trying to not exist in that way anymore. And I can tell you, it's definitely a breath of fresh air, man, to not have to live like that. But it is deeply intertwined with the NoFap movement, and that's why I mention it. So yeah, because ultimately it's just too much tension. People are so wound up. But the thing is, tension is multifaceted, and to be able to recognize, accept, deal with, and release tension is not easy. And it's not something we're taught. It is a skill we can kind of learn for sure, but it's not easy, and it's quite difficult, and it's uncomfortable because there's a certain stage to where you don't really know that you're in pain. You don't know that you're disassociated or checked out, because your nerves are just done. Your nerves there are just off, and you don't even know. And this is how we all exist to varying degrees, just switched off, and we have no clue really. But then eventually you start to actually get awareness, and that thing opens up, and it's like, oh my god, how the fuck, how am I been living with this whole time? And then obviously it's another step to actually accept it and have neutrality and be able to work through it and release it. And that is a process of, yes, can happen physically, but also mentally, and also on the nervous system directly, in working through deeper layers in the body. But of course, within there, there's a lot of risk. There's a huge risk of delusion and lying to yourself, which is why you need skilled teachers and people around you. And you need to think critically and develop discernment and critical thought and self observation and self inquiry and self reflection to be able to catch these things. Because typically the way we all live is there's some experience that we have early on in life, and then we spend the rest of our lives in reaction to that thing. This is why the great, sort of the great hilarious thing, but also a little bit of a hard pill to swallow at a certain point, is people think they're very unique, or their situation is unique, or that they're complicated, or they're individuals, or no one understands me, or no one will be able to figure this out, or I'm special, and all these ideas. When in reality, at a certain point, all of your behavior is completely predictable. Your thoughts are predictable. Your reactions are predictable. And to a large degree, the rest of your life is predictable. Obviously, there's always the unknown and what we don't know, that we don't know, etc. Of course, this is all implied. That's why I said within a certain thing. And this is just based on understanding causality, understanding causation chains, and understanding that A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to E. And that's really how things function on certain levels. But that's not really kind of what we're told, because we're filled with a lot of nonsense. And it takes a certain degree of strength and internal fortitude to accept how much of a cog you are and how individually unimportant you are, and recognize and accept all of your exaggerated, self-inflated, ridiculous ideas, positive and negative. Hating yourself and boosting yourself up is one and the same thing. Completely irrelevant, untrue, just ridiculousness, but part of the program. But what can happen is you're just one of these people, and then now you get into positive affirmations and self-help and loving yourself and that whole crazy world, and then that's 30, 40, 50 years of your life done. What do you have to show for it at the end? Not a lot, because you have not actually changed whatsoever. It's like you have these two bottles of oil, right? And you started off, this one was on the left, or my left, this one was on the right. And after 30 years, you're like, you know what? I've fucking changed. I'm a different person. It's like, nah, you're the same person, my friend. You just slightly adjusted it. I used to wear black t-shirts, now I wear white ones, so I'm a different person now. I guess on the most superficial, absurd level, yes, but past any real basis, no. So this is all talking about the Nofap thing. This is one long fucking rant on the Nofap. That's what I think about it, and this is, some of the larger context and things of causality that are at play. But, for certain people, it can be what they need to get their life in order, They can go to these extremes and then maybe eventually be like, man, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. Or maybe they just get lucky and have a mentor, or they get lucky and have some experience that can wake them up or something. Or maybe they don't ever get lucky, or they don't ever have that opportunity to spend forever just circling in addictions, because there's seemingly more and more addictions and more ways to waste your life and your money and your energy. They could go from beating it to porn to spending their life savings on cam girls. Like, it could be where it ends up. So, where I do have a lot more problems is when people start tying in Chinese medicine, internal training, and Jing, and all these other theories, and I'm pulling the sexual energy up my spine and pulling it in my brain, and I'm doing fusion of the 5 elements, microcosmic orbit, and alchemy, and I'm doing all this shit because I'm nofapping and I'm pulling it up my spine and I'm building my supercharged energy. It's like, you're not at all, my friend. You're just overheating your nervous system and causing a lot of stagnation and tension. Because if you're used to feeling nothing and you squeeze your fist as hard as you can, technically now you're feeling something. So you could be like, oh my god, I'm feeling the cheese building up in my hand right now. The kundalini is in my hand. It's like, no, you're just squeezing it, and that's just fucking tension. That is all that is. And then when you let go, you feel the after effect, the echo of like, whoa, it's tingly and like feels a little bit. I can feel it more. It's like a little bit warmer. It's kind of like buzzy now. It's like, yeah, you just stimulated your nerves. That's it. So at that point, I do have some problems because it's just it just makes no sense at all. It's dumb. But if you're in your if you're in your teens or 20s, this is what your life is usually. I mean, I was pretty dumb in my teens and pretty dumb in my 20s, and trying to be slightly less dumb in my 30s, but still fucking how it goes sometimes. Let's see. What the media says doesn't add up. Women have multiple orgasms, and we have only one at a time, and we are accused of being too sexual. I mean, that is a lot of nonsense for sure, because I've met quite a lot of women who were way more sexual than I was, but we get the stigma because a lot of reasons, depending on what level we want to go into, but partially because if we're the ones initiating, then we get the blame, because responsibility, basically power, responsibility, and blame all kind of go together. So if you're the leader in the dynamic and you're initiating physicality with a female partner, you are in some ways in the power position, so you have the responsibility, so you can get blamed for some shit. That's just kind of how it goes. Not saying it's right or wrong, but if you don't want those things, then just don't ever have power and surrender all your responsibility over to someone else. Like, you know. But yeah, it is kind of a ridiculous stereotype, but also most stereotypes are kind of ridiculous because, in some ways, there is variation. But I will say that men can have more orgasms and can have orgasms without ejaculation. Um, I've done it. It's basically, yeah, it's a thing, which I didn't know that it was actually a thing. I'd heard of it and I thought, oh, that's kind of dumb. And then one day I was, you know, doing whatever I was doing, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, interesting. That's this sensation, which I had usually associated with this, but it's separate from this, and it's just cranking out all the time. All right, I guess that's a thing. So that is possible. It's not easy for sure, but seemed to be possible. Blah blah blah. Let's see. Also, too, another thing to say on the Nofap thing is like these people are typically, I guess, not in relationships. They don't have seemingly significant others. They don't have like real relationships with women. Because I would assume that a lot of people in that Nofap world could easily make their way over to the pickup artist world and then get into the red pill, blue pill, MGTOW, whatever world, and it just becomes this sort of like circle of kind of toxic, weird nonsense. Yeah, it kind of does. um, so, yeah, all that is really implying that probably have low self confidence, low self esteem, don't know how to talk to women, don't know how to talk to people in general. which that's really probably what they need to focus on. They need to actually figure out some purpose and meaning in their life, which means they're probably going to go down the Jocko and Jordan Peterson and David Goggins, social media porn hub type thing, and be like, oh, I've got a purpose and meaning, and now I'm blah blah. And like, just another kind of extreme thing, but maybe it's a step in the right direction. Maybe it's a bit better. Who's to say? Obviously, I wish everyone well, and if there's all these people out available now or sometimes a shitload of wisdom and insight to offer. But at the end of the day, it's only as valuable as what someone can actually do with it and apply it into their life, which it doesn't take a lot. If you can just take one or three ideas, be like, all right, that's it, putting this to action, then you can kind of turn off all the influx of information and just focus on taking action, integrating and applying the concepts and the wisdom. Otherwise, it's just useless. Let me see. What is your opinion on MGTOW? I mean, on one hand, I see where a lot of guys are coming from, because I have spent some time just trying to research that thing and understand it, and understand who are the thought leaders, who are the big voices in that group, what do they stand for, how do they get there, where are they going, all these types of things. And basically, after a very short while, it's very clear that they are spending their time whining and complaining about people, i.e., women, who are viewing things strictly through the lens of gender, race, and like a class power dynamic, while they are all the time viewing things through a lens of gender, sex, or gender, race, and some class power dynamic struggle. So in many ways, they are just the flip side of the coin of the very thing that they're against. And most of the time, they are just the exact thing that they are against, because they're spending their time complaining to each other and stereotyping and putting all women into this group, then like demonizing the group, dehumanizing the group, and then talking about why they're right, but then they're complaining because that's what women are doing to men. And it's just like, this is just dumb. Like, I don't understand the value here. But I can also take it at another angle and see how some of these guys have been completely screwed over by women, either through family courts or divorces or false accusations or poor relationships, emotional abuse, physical abuse, all these types of things, which they can have legitimate claims for. I just don't know that yelling about it on the internet all the time and being, making that your identity and becoming a thought leader about being against that, is that useful? I don't know if it is. I mean, I don't know. I can understand being pissed off about it and wanting to go on the internet and complain, or warn other guys, because that I do think can be valuable at a certain extent, meaning a lot of guys are really just naive. They are really deep in a lot of fantasy and a lot of nonsense, or they lack real world experience. Maybe they didn't have a good mentor or a good father or a good family dynamic to set a good baseline for them, so they're just clueless. So some of these guys do actually provide useful information of like, look, here's kind of the world you're dealing with, and here's some of the negatives that you could run into, and here's some of the things that you could potentially protect yourself from, or mistakes that you can avoid that many of us have made. So on a certain point, that could actually be useful, but too often it's just the same exact behavior that they're against, which I'm not a fan of, because I just don't exist really like that anymore, and I don't find it to be interesting. Because it's just basically what's happening is people have some feeling or some identity, and they're going on the internet and finding people to validate that back to them, and they're getting off on that circular exchange. And I just don't personally have time or energy for that, and I feel kind of just gross, and I feel sad, honestly. After, if I listen to or watch any MGTOW type of stuff, I just feel sad, and like, it's not good. Doesn't feel very productive. Um, but also too, like I said, many of the things they say there can be a strong case for, and many of them are true, and many guys have been totally and utterly hosed by women. But I'm not going to take the jump and say that they were hosed by women because those women are women and women are bad. That's called dumb, because it's like saying, oh, a lot of black people commit crimes, so black people are going to commit more crimes. No, there's tons of other factors. Like maybe the fact that they live in an extremely dangerous, impoverished environment, and X, Y, and Z. But where I was growing up in Indiana, people were watching Cops every day. And when you turn on Cops, that's what you see. You turn on the news, that's what you see. So then what do people will think? Boom. So then, of course, I'm in this little town in Indiana, and people are fucking racist. And people are still like that today. And that's just one example, and I just say that example because we can all kind of be like, oh yeah, that's dumb. But when people start making it a gender thing, then somehow people are like, oh, well, that's different. It's like, well, no, it's the same logic. It's like, oh, well, these two women that I knew were mean, so they're women. That must mean that all members of that group are that way. So now I'm going my own way because all women are bad. It's like, well, there's other factors at play. Um, so I think that becomes a bigger problem because regardless of the area of life, people's brains function off of correlation, not causation, not critical thought, not objectivity, not self-reflection or self-analysis at all. There are people that fool them. Oh, I'm objective. I'm a scientist. No, you don't even know what those words mean. Like you're just that is your dogma, is what that is. And you just worship whatever that paradigm happens to poop out that day, even though it's probably disproven or completely false or completely impossible to reproduce ever again. But that was your dogma. It's like, just go on somewhere with your fucking nonsense. And I had professors like that in college, and I would just be like, oh, actually, you're just extremely biased, and here's your biases based on all the logical proofs that I've learned from your class. And they're like, one dude was actually like, all right, you're right. And just kind of walked away. And he was a little more chill with me after that. Whereas before, he was always just like, oh, that's just a bunch of nonsense. Oh, that's just this. And I'm like, dude, you're just being extremely closed-minded because it doesn't fit your little dogma. I mean, binary thinking, I think, is useful. It's kind of how we function. Is the stove hot or cold? Okay, it's cold. Okay, I'm safe. Like, obviously, this is how we function. When you walk, or when our body walks into a room, like, we're scanning the room on a kind of unconscious level, assessing fear to know if we're okay. Because if there's someone who walk in and there's a gun, we need to leave. But yeah, obviously it's a context thing. What I'm saying is people's minds focus off of correlation, not off of direct causation, because they don't have the computational power to understand a lot of variables. And that's just the nature of the mind, unless you develop it and work it, because very few people are born that way or born with a brain of that caliber. Very few people are born that way, I think, and that's why they would be prodigies or geniuses or whatever, because if that's how you come out, that's how you think, and all of a sudden you don't have any hindrances, and you get an extra 10, 20 years of that, and you can actually focus that into something, you can just probably blaze far ahead of your peers. But that is just a big thing that I think people would be benefited to actually start to understand causality. Because it is confusing and it is annoying, because the vast majority of the time what people say is not what they mean, and we might use the same words, but the words that we are using actually mean different things. So it's actually listening to the person and understanding what they mean by the words that they use, and then why and how they came to that conclusion of that meaning of those words. Instead of just assuming, oh, well, that's what they mean because that's what they said, and that's what these words mean, and that's what they mean to me. It's like, well, no, that's you. So you need to be, if there's two people in the interaction, you need to be able to say, like, here's me, here's them, here's what we both mean and are both doing, and you can observe it from that way instead of just being stuck in yourself or stuck in the other person. Or in the rare instance, you're both just kind of grooving on the same page, sure, but that's fucking rare because we all have very different life experiences and are kind of telling ourselves these nuanced stories. So that's a bit of a tangent, but that's basically what I think of MGTOW, and that's, you could also say that's what I think of a lot of things, because it ultimately just comes down to, yeah, they have some grains of truth and some useful insights and could be helpful to a certain percentage, but the vast majority of it is probably just emotional nonsense and a lot of correlation without any real causation. And actually isolating and identifying clear variables and understanding it from that basis. Because what they're against is basically lumping everyone into a group, stereotyping them, categorizing, dehumanizing them, but that's kind of to a large degree what they're doing. And ultimately, at an emotional level, it just seems like that puts you in a very defensive and hostile kind of like this kind of position, which if that's your basic orientation, then of course that's going to create less than ideal outcomes because subconsciously people are going to be on edge and be a little bit like pushed away from you unless they are also just completely fucking delusional. Because that's the other thing too, is I hear a lot of these stories with MGTOW, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Your basis for this woman was like, yeah, oh, I saw her and she was a smoking hot blonde, and I just fucking love blondes, man. So I just started dating her, man. And then fucking 6 months later, I found out she's just crazy. I'm like, no, you're an idiot. Like, that was your sole basis. That's how deeply you looked into this person. Oh, they're fucking hot. I like blondes. That big tits. Fucking case closed, man. Really? And you're surprised it didn't work out? Okay. I mean, if you're buying a car, then sure. It's like, well, shit, it's got 4 wheels. Shit's red. It's fast. Got a warranty. It's in my budget. Sold. Okay, but you're talking about a person. You're talking about a relationship. You're talking about someone you're sharing your life with, which can go very wrong, which is what we have heard. And women are just as guilty of it from that I've heard as well. Obviously, from a physical standpoint, also being like, I don't know, he was nice, like, he had a lot of money, he had like a good job, and his friends were cool. Like, they just list these criteria, like buying a car. And it's like, well, and then you're surprised that he turned out to be another person. It's like, you didn't even see the person to begin with. Because I met this person for 90 seconds, and I already saw the person that it took you 6 months to see, because that shit's right out in the open. It's obvious. Unless someone is just through and through actual psycho or sociopath, who they are is obvious. And even if they are those things, it's also usually obvious. You can also usually tell. So that all goes back to the MGTOW thing, because oftentimes that's what they're saying, which they kind of get now. But what they've done is just pull the Nofap and just gone to the other extreme. Where they're like, oh, you gotta learn how to vet these women, man. You gotta fucking vet them, because you never know. You don't vet them, you could be marrying a psycho. She could have kids somewhere. You could have drama. It's like, dude, it's just basically like, yeah, I was beating it 6 times a day, but now I'm not beating it at all. No porn for me. No beating it for me, man. You gotta Nofap that shit. It's like, all right, you're still just crazy. Like, you still have not developed any self-reflection, self-analysis, any degree of responsibility, any degree or real understanding of who you are, what drives you, what you want, why you're here, what you like want, what you value, what you actually enjoy. Because just on a completely personal level, an example is like when I would pursue women, what I eventually realized is a lot of the women that were like hot, I actually didn't find attractive. And I still do, it's still that way. The women I'm attracted to or I think are hot are usually not what would be considered across the board hot. Because the women that most guys are like, oh, she's fucking hot, they gross me out the vast majority of the time. They don't do anything for me. Um, Whether that's on, you know, YouTube or Instagram or people like that, it just does nothing. Because usually I can see what's actually going on, what type of person they actually are. But anyways, the point of this is like, if you're completely objectifying and basically relating to yourself and living your life from this low level, then it's very obvious that your relationships are going to be from that same place, so they're probably not going to work for shit. Unless you happen to find someone who is proportionally and equally and complementary delusional, and you match up in your delusions, then that could work, and that might be totally fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, you should be conscious, you should work on yourself, you should do this. I don't really recommend that at all. It's fucking annoying. It's a pain in the ass. Makes your life more complicated and difficult. Don't recommend it at all. Unless really all that stuff is oftentimes complete nonsense and just procrastination and more confusion and excuses. What actually makes a difference is solving a problem. But first you have to identify what is the problem and then figure out how to actually solve it in a clear and efficient and effective manner. That's what actually matters. Not like, well, I'm on this journey of, you know, understanding myself and learning and growing and blah blah blah. And then you're like, I'm journaling, I'm doing therapy, I'm doing this, I'm a free association. It's like, that's just more kind of masturbatory nonsense, which there can be value into a certain point, but the point is that action is really where it comes down to, and having a clear understanding of causation and understanding. So, getting back to MGTOW, typically people are still on this yo-yo extreme dynamic instead of actually understanding the things that I've listed within themselves. And then, of course, that's going to transfer over to another person. But if all your criteria is like, well, they were hot, you know, they have a good job, and they were funny, it's like, is that it, huh? Is that it? Like, I can say from personally, back when I did a lot of online dating, I would have a lot of dates. I would, you know, meet up with women, and let's say they'd be, after an hour, 2 hours in this date, they're like sold, they're on board, you know, they want to go fuck, they want to go bang it out. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not really, it's not how this is going to go, I'm afraid. This might be your usual script. But I'm not really down for that, and here's why. You haven't asked me a single question. When I do talk, you interrupt me or talk over me or try to compete with me or argue with me. So then I just retreat and let you feel important or something. So I'm like, clearly you're just on another something, because there's really nothing happening here. I'm not feeling anything. There's nothing coming back. There's no real exchange. So I'm gonna go, and that's usually how that goes. But and their pattern is completely broken. So it's like, whoa, what? I mean, they'll do one of these things where they're like smiling, but they're like doing the fast blink thing, trying to, you know, hide their emotions. But the rest of them is like, oh, okay. They're just like doing this thing. I'm like, all right, dude, I can see your real reaction, and I can see the fake bullshit, which is why this shit's not working out, because I'm not sure which one of you is really real. And if I really wanted to bang it out, I just go home, rub it out, go to bed. Way easier and less risk than whatever this nonsense is. The thing is, if you're showing up wanting to bang me after 30 minutes, odds are it's not the first or the first 100th or 200th time this has happened, which is fine if that's your thing, but It's not something I necessarily want to dip my toes into. Um, so I've seen it from that perspective. I've seen it in my guy friends as well. Um, I mean, I saw your question. I'll answer it. I'm just like on a long rant right now about MGTOW, which most people probably don't care about. But that's pretty much it. That's all I'll say about that. If there's other follow up questions regarding MGTOW or relationships or whatever, go ahead. But I think that covers the bases quite a bit. I recently started to experience some hormonal imbalances. I take Shatavari and Dongguai. Any other suggestion? Much appreciated. This will be helpful, but probably not very helpful because women's hormones are quite a bit more complicated than men's, especially hormonal imbalances. That's quite vague, especially considering the wide variety of hormones that women have and the fluctuations they go through and the rhythms they have and those things. So that's hard to really ascertain exactly what that means. I don't think there are necessarily. I mean, there's like black cohosh, there's omega 3s, there's shatavari, these types of things, but and even dongguai is not really like a hormonal imbalance herb. Dongguai is more of a blood mover. So this is the thing: is like you'd be like, I have a hormonal imbalance, but actually your blood liver is stagnant, or the blood of your uterus is stagnant. If you take dongguai, then that moves the blood, then that relieves the symptoms. So you think it's a hormonal thing, but it's actually not a hormonal thing. Causation chain becomes a bit different. So really, the best thing to do is either work with a naturopath that does testing, which testing I think is limited to a certain degree because it's just a snapshot, but for women it can be more useful if you do it over time to establish baselines for what your cycle and hormones are. The other thing is develop or work with a Chinese medicine practitioner who does herbs and acupuncture, because whatever you're experiencing or talking about, there's absolutely a Chinese herbal formula for that can go in and just help mitigate it quite directly. So that's what I would do, work with those two things because of the reasons that I had just listed. You have to also understand that hormonal imbalances and these things, it could be, I mean, you could be going through a stressful time in your life, some upheaval, some up and down, some different thing that's throwing off your emotions and throwing off your hormones. I don't really know. I'm just pointing out the fact of other variables can play in to those things, but the best thing would be to work with one of the two practitioners that I had just listed, because it's a bit more complicated than just throwing an herb at it. Best tonic herbs for the liver. My question would just be, what do you mean? Like the liver has hundreds of functions. And do you mean the physiological liver in the Western sense, or do you mean liver with a capital I in terms of the Chinese medicine thought? And then also, what do you mean explicitly? Because sometimes say, I need help with the liver. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, I have this exact thing that I want help with. Then should just say that. Because these are all different questions, which would have different answers, which would require me to say different things. So I'll put it back in your court. You can answer my questions. You thought this was a Q&A? Think again. Yeah, so answer those questions, and then I can answer that question and give a recommendation. I'm trying to think if I have other questions in my email. Nope. Yeah, you're welcome. Hopefully you can find those types of practitioners. If you cannot, there's no one in your area. I think there's a lot more naturopaths that do like telemedicine, so that you can go and get blood work done or hormone profiles done somewhere locally, or someone can even come to your house, take your blood, take your profiles, and then you can work with someone in that basis. That would just probably be the most effective way, because It's a bit more complicated than I would say men's men's parts, because we don't have, you know, a cycle in that way. And just FYI, if you're a man, you're not affected by the moon, so please don't ever buy into that hippie new age astrological bullshit. Women are affected by the moon, but we are not, because we don't have a uterus or menstrual cycle. So please don't be like, oh, the full moon's really affected me. No, it's just an excuse. Yep. So I'll wait for other questions, or I'll just start talking about other products. Because I got a lot of products in the works, actually. Damn. This is probably like one of the most ridiculous oils I've ever had. It's crazy. And even the texture on this, it's like thick, man. It's like syrup, or it's like honey. It's very viscous and sticky. Whenever you put it on, it makes your skin sticky too, man. It's pretty crazy. That is something else. To go ahead and put some of that on. So if you like, I don't know if you can even see my hand, but yeah, it's all like, it's like I got honey or molasses. That's what it's like. It's like molasses. Yeah. Dude, that's insane. Is there any other questions? Oh wait. Oh, here we go. Sorry. There were more questions. I just didn't see them coming up. I don't know why. Sorry about that. I was sitting here getting high on oils, man. Let's see. How to purchase Hyperion herbs? Are you sending them to New Zealand? Yeah, I think we ship to New Zealand all the time. So if you just go to Hyperion Herbs, and you should be able to, on the checkout, you'll be able to put in the shipping, and you should see New Zealand on the list. And shipping will probably be like, I don't know, $5 or $10, depending on the size. And then it'll ship out via DHL Global Mail. So it'll probably take 7 to 12 business days, I should say. This is New Zealand. Their post system's pretty good. So yeah, definitely can ship to New Zealand, no problem. Definitely check it out. Let's see. I read a long time ago that women from some non-Western countries don't experience negative symptoms during menopause. To be honest, I don't know if it would be like East versus West or whatever, but what my guess would just to be that whatever was referenced in that example, they probably had a better diet and less mental and emotional stress, because in my opinion, it is the mental and emotional stress that is causing, with menopause, I don't know, but at least with PMS, that type of thing, because I know a few women that are actually healthy, and their period is pretty like smooth. This is the thing, is like, we can speak about things in sort of this Western bio chem type thing, micro macronutrients and this and this. Funny thing is Chinese medicine exists for however long, and they don't give a shit about nutrients. There's no Chinese classic that's like, you gotta get that vitamin C, you gotta get these ratios of all these nutrients right. I think, of course, there's a little bit of a grain of truth to that, but I don't think that is really a great model. I think it's kind of pretty limited. Ultimately, what really matters is the quality of the blood and how well that blood moves. That's what I would say makes a lot more difference. And here's a great example that I will give you right now that will show exactly what I mean, and show exactly why I say what I say and why I don't really care much about nutrition and nutrient research. So listen to what I am about to say. Listen to this example very clearly, because personally, I prefer my life to be more simple and easy, so I don't concern myself with a lot of heady philosophical shit, right? So here's the example that I will give you. So let's say I was experiencing elevated cortisol levels and anxiety, racing thoughts, and depression, right? So, which this is a literal thing. I'll tell you the exact story. So anxiety, uh, feeling stressed. So what I did, sat on the couch. I breathed and pulsed certain areas in my body for a few minutes. Guess what? Anxiety, gone. Elevated cortisol, stress response, gone. Breathing, tightness in chest, gone. Within that few minutes of time. Did I have to take an herb? Did I have to modulate any nutrient levels? Did I have to eat any food? No, none. I mean, obviously, yeah, I eat fucking food and whatever, but I'm saying in this exact medical instance, which I have done and reproduced many times. Another example, let's say I was depressed, feeling heavy because, where I live, in the deepest part of winter, there was like, it got dark at like 4 p.m. Even when it wasn't dark, and it wasn't even breath work. I wasn't doing Wim Hof. I wasn't doing any fucking pranayama or Stanislav Grof. Like there was nothing exciting or stimulating about it. It was, like I said, I wasn't even breathing particularly deep. There was no hyperventilation. There was none of those things. It was literally just breathing normally and moving certain areas of my body with my mind. Basically, I was just doing what Qigong means, meaning the energy of my body, which is referring to the interaction of my mind and my body, and then the skill to actually use that. So I used that to do a thing and accomplish a specific task within a short period of time, which I've done and repeated multiple times. So same thing, I was depressed. So sat down, pulsed, depression, done, gone, over. So and that took a few minutes. Obviously, it took 5 to 8 years to get the skill to be able to do the thing. But the point is, it required no macronutrient levels or whatever. Other things, to have laid in bed or been sitting on the couch. And the thing is, what I'm talking about is not saying like I had experiences. I'm saying I could sit down and do this anytime. I could go on a walk and do it again. I can lay in bed. I do it every night before bed. It's not a one-off experience. Like, man, I breathed once and then I felt better afterwards. It's clearly saying I identified this issue, I applied this cause and created this effect, and can repeat such things. So what I'm saying is, usually what people would do is, oh my God, I have these feelings. Oh, I should go to the doctor. Go to the doctor. Oh, you have these feelings? Oh, well, probably your dopamine and your serotonin, or you have some chemical thing off. So we're gonna get you some therapy or maybe psychoanalysis because someone was mean to you as a kid, and here's this pill. So that is this whole causation chain, and they're still feeling those feelings, and they're trying to throw chemistry at it. They're trying to throw nutrients at it. But you know what? The vast majority of the time, it might kind of work. It might kind of provide some relief. Obviously, in extreme situations, it's necessary. But most of the time, it doesn't really do a lot. Let's just face it. Because if it actually worked, then it wouldn't be that big of an industry. Because people would come in, get fixed, and go out and be good. But they don't. So another flip side is, so I'm gonna take the natural route. Okay, so I have this feeling and I do this. So okay, now what herb should I take? I'm gonna get a nutrient panel. Oh shit, these nutrients are off. So now I gotta get all these supplements. I gotta change my diet. I gotta start doing all these things. I'm gonna pay all this stuff money. I'm doing. So we're talking about various levels of complexity, causation, and what those effects will produce, not to mention cost of money, cost of time, cost of energy, versus me sitting on the couch for 5-10 minutes. So I'm just using that to illustrate a point and illustrate some holes in some logics and some holes in paradigms and some holes in people's uh, some holes in people's things. No, I mean I understand what you're saying. There's no, it's not like I just need you to explain it to you more and you'll understand what I mean. It's like no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just proving a point of my own opinion and my own experience. If you don't agree or don't want to do it, it really doesn't matter. It's not an argument. I'm just using it to illustrate why I say the things that I say and why I had said that certain things were not important. Or even at the beginning of this Q&A, I'm telling people like Qigong's, it's a waste of time unless you actually have the things to put into it and have 100 different variables. I mean, I don't have to have all the data. The point is, if I can do A and get to B, I don't need any more data because I just accomplished the task. So the data is irrelevant. If I can get rid of my depression, I don't need to understand the micronutrients that might have caused the depression. I can just got rid of it. So I don't need to understand how vitamin A and all these interactions could have led to that physiological symptom if I can just get rid of it. Like, we could study why different nutrients and can affect your blood circulation, or I can just improve my blood circulation and move more blood in and out of that area of my body. Job done. Don't need to know any of that stuff. Didn't need to buy anything. Didn't need to take, etc. So I'm just saying, personally, that's why I don't get into those things, why I don't find value in it. But I understand if you're in that world and that's your belief system and that's your paradigm and that's meaningful to you, then obviously go for it. And honestly, I think that is kind of better for most people, which is why I said at the beginning of the video, like, internal arts is a waste of time for people because they think somehow moving their arms is going to get rid of their anxiety, when in actuality it's not really the mechanism. So I'm basically just saying, like, this is why I'm not really that big of a fan, because it is a simpler, easier, more direct way. Because basically what I'm saying is the fact that I can get from A to B just illustrates that these things aren't really how the body works in general. Because if that was absolutely how the body worked, then I would not be able to get from A to B without accounting for and applying those things. So, yeah. And it's also, the other part of it is Chinese medicine and their whole philosophical thing. They don't give a shit about nutrients. They've never talked about nutrients. It doesn't really register, because it's not actually how the body functions and actually how the body works and not how life works. So that's why I don't really put a lot of weight and validity in it, and why I also do not believe that it will actually lead to much longevity at all. Because this is all very new stuff, so we can't really look at anyone and be like, holy shit, they're 120 because they did all these things. No, all we have is a lot of wackos and really ungrounded people with a lot of nervous system and mental tension, and a lot of kind of disembodied, disassociated paradigms, saying a lot of grandiose claims and hyping up on people's vanity and sort of like desire to live longer and forever. But ultimately, like, if these people start cranking out people that are super old and healthy, I mean, that's the important thing, is you can be 120, but your body and your health are trash. Who cares? It's really not that good. Because this is the thing. People are like, oh, I'm in my 50s, 60s, or even younger now, and I have joint problems, so the way I'm going to fix my joint is I'm going to get stem cells, I'm going to inject them into my joint, and that's going to fix it. Or I'm going to get these, I don't know, people were getting like cells from like a calf's eyeballs, and they're taking that. I can't remember what those things are called, but I watched a biohacker podcast, and they're talking about these all these different crazy nutrients they're harvesting from like people in third world countries and animals, baby animals and shit. I'm like, really, dude? Like, this is how you're gonna de-age and heal your joints? So you could do all that, sure. Or I don't know, you could just learn how to actually use your body more efficiently, so you're not damaging the joint. And then you could also actually physiologically learn to pulse and move the synovial fluids in that joint, and create more space in the joint so that your bones are no longer rubbing together. Job done. And then if you can do that for your entire life, keep that up for your entire life, then there's no real causation chain for that to break down or damage. Thus, job done, quality of life high. And the point of what I'm saying that is, everything I'm saying is proven. It's been done for thousands of years. It's been done by tons of people. It's had millions and millions and millions and millions of people putting in their time and energy, and it's attainable. It's not that high level. It's not that difficult. So to me, that sounds more commonsensical than shooting stem cells from my fucking femur into my whatever, or whatever that takes. I'd rather just learn how to use my body more efficiently so I'm not damaging it, and then actually pulse the joint, move the fluids, and create more space so the bones aren't touching. Job done. Didn't have to really go down that crazy rabbit hole and all the mental stress and strain. And it's coming from a world that has real examples and have actually achieved it, not a bunch of wackadoodles that have really not been existing for very long. And this is what I'm saying. The fact that people's lives, and they're so involved with their diet and they're having to micromanage their nutrients and their food intake, that is a lot of mental stress and tension. This is what I'm saying. To live your life in that way, to exist in that way, and invest so much time and energy is a lot of tension. And if that's your jam and you get off on that, go ahead. I'm just saying personally, that sounds like a lot of work. The thing is like, it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, feeling better and good doesn't necessarily equal actually being healthier, because this is a great example that I can give you. Everything I was saying earlier about pulsing the joint, one of my friends who's actually a medical practitioner, I was like, which one of your wrists is worse? And he's like, oh, this is my right one's worse. So I pulsed it, I grabbed his joint, grabbed the fluid and the stuff on the inside, and actually started pulsing the inside of his joint for like 60 seconds. Afterwards, he's like, holy shit, like, my joint feels way better. The point of that is, he's like, oh, I never realized how shitty my joint felt. So what I'm saying is, oftentimes what is normal for us is only normal because we're used to feeling so shitty. And the only way that we know that that was shitty is by feeling better. But because we're stuck in feeling shitty, we can't actually feel better. So it takes some kind of outside stimulus to introduce a new cause, to actually introduce a different way that we might be able to feel. But what I was saying earlier is, that's difficult to do. That's not easy, based on just the cards we're all dealt and how our system works. But that is a perfect example of everything that I have just been saying, because my friend, he's a smart guy. He's graduated from medical school. He's a intelligent person, but he had no clue. And it took me 60 seconds to actually open his joint and get it to move for him to realize how shitty his joint had been feeling for the rest of his life prior to that. And then how shitty his other joint felt in comparison, because one was like kind of smooth and didn't really like lubricate, and the other one was like kind of crunchy. It's like, whoa, I had no idea. And I'm like, yeah, that's just 60 seconds. Imagine 10 minutes a day, every day for 20 years, or 10 years, or a year even. Imagine what that would do in comparison to where you are now. So that's what I'm saying. People are like, oh, well, I live this way and it feels good to me. It's like, yeah, it only feels that way because you have no clue how shitty you probably actually feel, how wound up and stressful you actually are. Unless your body is completely supple and you can grab all of your muscles and all of your tissues, they're all hydrated, there's no trigger points. You're really flexible and mobile and strong in all ranges of motion. If those things are all true, then I rest my case. There's no mental stress, there's no mental tension. But the vast majority of the time, you look at these people who uphold these types of paradigms and their structure is garbage. Their posture is like trash. You could just touch them. Like they're wound up with physical and nervous tension all over their body. So it's kind of like, well, your body is this, but your mind is this, and they are not connected. That's my point. That's what I've been saying. So there's my examples. I rest my case. Let's see. I'm just saying, people don't realize that getting obsessed about your diet just proves that you're not healthy. I mean, there's obviously a certain basic idea there, but past a certain point, it means you're not healthy. That's just basic facts. But if you exist in a world, in an echo chamber where everyone is living their life like that, it becomes very easy to think that that's normal. Just like if you're a drug addict and all your friends are drug addicts, then you just think that's how everyone lives and that's what's the norm. You don't realize that no, you just exist in an echo chamber of disease, and it's actually not healthy. So that's it. Any other questions? That was a pretty fucking. I mean, I'm not talking about you personally, Hamster Shat 123. I don't know you. I don't even know your name. I mean, you're alone in this. If you're following people online, referencing people's work, then you're not alone in this. You're getting other people's ideas and leveraging other people's experiences and following in their footsteps, which is what I mean. Mentally is what I'm saying, because you have this thing, and then you read this person who you respect and you think is an authority, and they agree with what you think and feel, so you're like, oh, it must be right. And then they have a following online, they tour and give lectures and do all these things. That's what I meant. If you had your own completely unique dietary theory that none of us had heard of until now on this live stream, then I would say sure. But I'm sure it does feel all alone in this because most of the planet or people, probably don't care and aren't interested and don't understand what you're talking about, which is how it goes sometimes. Diseases of Exotic Animals by Dr. Wallach. Look it up. He wrote the book on nutrition. I mean, that's cool. Like I said, I'm sure, like all the other things that we talked about, I'm sure there are obviously some grains of truth and threads to that. Like obviously the nutrient levels in our soil, at least in America, are less in many cases than what they used to be through the over farming and usage of fertilizers and pesticides and so many things, which in general has lowered the overall quality of our food, which we can measure in some ways kind of through nutrition. So then thus people are less healthy. Kind of yes, kind of no, but that's just one factor. Again, we then get into correlation versus causation because, but whatever. Like I said, I'm just saying this is what I think, this is how I live, and then I explained why. And that's it. I really don't care if people agree or disagree, or I don't really recommend doing what I do or whatever. Do you have plans to get more teaware on your site in the future? I mean, I've thought about it, but I kind of need to because, I sell high-end teas, so people need some way to brew it. But sourcing it's just kind of annoying. It's not annoying, it's just difficult to, because if you start getting good pots, they're all handmade, which means they're all kind of different, which means it's a little bit difficult to predict the quality completely. The other thing is like getting things that are clean, meaning it's not made from clays or materials that are laden with whatever or cheaply made. Plus, then shipping is a bit of a hassle. Um, but yeah, I think I want to. I was thinking about it actually at a certain point, but it's just also getting the margins on a good teapot and getting them to be good. But I'll see what I can do. Because I had the Guy one on there before, but Guy ones honestly just kind of suck. And honestly, that one kind of sucks unless you have huge hands. Guy ones are kind of like pro level, like not really like a beginner tea device. So I can get some teapots probably. But if you need some like recommendations, just send me an email and I can show you where you can get a decent pot. Which you definitely need a decent pot and some cups if you're going to be brewing higher end teas. So it just makes sense to sell those as well. Let's see. I got introduced to orthorexia through my aunt and uncle. It's daunting to see how bad it is, and then now it's all they talk about. I remember there were some documentaries that I saw back in the day. Coincidentally, after I decided to stop being a raw foodist, I saw documentaries about orthorexia, and I was just like, ouch. Hit a little close to home. But yeah, I mean, it's ultimately it just comes down to some kind of emotional thing under a different name, because people typically have fear or anxiety that they're just gonna like, they're gonna die, or like this is kind of the extreme thing, like, oh, everything's toxic, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. They get into that thing, or just sort of like kind of a control thing. That's, I think, what it is for a lot of people is they find areas of their life to be out of control, so that they find this area and think, oh, okay, I can control this. And that becomes kind of a thing, and then it can go all the way into body dysmorphia, that kind of thing. Yeah, people are quite obsessed with that type of orthorexia. And honestly, now, and many of it's getting a bit, or a lot of it's getting a bit normalized and popularized through Instagram and these types of influencers. Because it's like you watch, or you look at some of these things, and people's diets are just green smoothies and salads. That's a bit of a red flag. I mean, that's not a diet. That's not even really food. It's just sort of like, I guess if you have cancer, or because that often becomes like people's, oh, so and so cured cancer. I'm like, okay, well, do you have stage 3 cancer? No. I'm like, okay, well then your argument isn't really that good, is it? But that's oftentimes people's arguments. It's like, well, yeah, they went on that extreme diet to like starve themselves and change it. So yeah, in many ways, it's just kind of a emotional problem under a different name. We'll say, man, this oil is fucking crazy. I think I have another one. Here we go. Crazy. Let me see. This is these are new agarwood oils, not ones that I'm selling. These are some for my personal. This one has like a patchouli tobacco minty like forest thing going on. It's fucking crazy. What's the most powerful herb for anxiety? Single herb probably would not recommend, but what I would say is the Agar 35 and the SEMDA formulas on the Hyperion Herbs website. So if you go to HyperionHerbs.com, go to new products, you'll see Agar 35 and SEMDA. Those are by far the most potent and effective formulas for those types of things that I have ever come across in my life. They are in capsules, so I would recommend putting them or opening the capsule up in a little bit of hot water and drink it that way, and you will feel it much more quickly. If you just swallow the capsule with some food and normal stuff, you probably won't feel it as much. I mean, some people do if they have really good digestion, but most people's digestion are kind of shit, so they don't feel it that quickly. So I'd recommend just doing that. So this one is the one that I was or are selling or am the one that I am selling, which I think I have like 1 or 2 bottles left actually. Yeah, this one's good. Damn. The crazy thing is like it just changes over time. The more you have it and the more time you spend with it, you just get more out of it. It's crazy. Because I smelled this like a week ago, and I like thought I for sure had it dialed in. Now I'm smelling it, and I'm getting like a whole different thing out of it. It's actually better now. It's crazy. Damn. That was the one that I did sell, and I think there might be some people on here that actually have it. Let me see if, where's Potent Sativa at? Is Potent Sativa still on the live chat? If Potent Sativa is on the live chat, let us know, because he definitely has a bottle of that oud oil, so he can chime in with his experience. But if you didn't buy one yet, I recommend you should. I have 1 or 2 left, so you could absolutely get one. Let me see, there's a question. Did you have social anxiety growing up, and what did you do to overcome it? Alright, so Potent Sativa is here. Yeah, so how are you liking the oil thus far? Because as I could recollect, you have this. So let me know how you're liking it, or if you have any other questions about it. And then also, how have you been using it? Put it on your hands, your wrists, ears, like, I'm just curious to hear, because it's a pretty crazy oil, and it's fucking pretty high grade. So flipping the Q&A around on people, start asking the asking the questions to the questioners. Maybe I should put CBD oil in my hot water. Yeah, there's a thing, if you put whatever you're going to consume in a little bit of hot water and take it that way, it'll typically hit your system a bit faster. But back to the question, did you have social anxiety growing up, and what did you do to overcome it? I would say I absolutely did, and probably still do to a certain degree. I think he has both. I think he has the sandalwood and the agarwood, to be totally honest. But definitely the agarwood. So yeah, I definitely had that. I was a really shy kid. I hated school, and I was the type of person where I don't know, I wasn't really comfortable in groups, and like it held me back in a lot of ways, because there was just certain environments and times where I would feel comfortable, like I could actually just be myself and be into what I was doing, and there was other ones where I would just feel completely kind of like blocked up, and I think it affected me negatively in terms of sports, because there are certain sports where I was always just really timid and didn't display my actual potential or ability or even skill. Like, for example, I can remember very clearly in 8th grade, if I was just playing basketball at home, my percentage of shooting was super high. I felt very comfortable shooting. There was just like a certain feeling that if I got inside my body, I feel like I just like fucking knock it down. I just somehow figured out if I just get this feeling and I somehow put my mind in the right spot of the basket and I have this feeling, it's just gonna go in all the time. And with baseball, it was kind of a similar idea to where when I was like, I'd be in my backyard just throwing a tennis ball up against the back of the house because there was a big, huge kind of brick wall section on the back of the house. So I could just practice um, throwing that way. And there was, I could choose a brick and hit the brick from wherever. And of course, I would practice from different angles or from jumping, da, da, da. And if I, again, had the right feeling, put my mind in the right place, I could hit the brick. But when it came down to like in a game, I would somehow get nervous and timid, and I would just play like third base or shortstop, and like I'd get the ball, and then somehow I would just botch the throw to first base, and it would just go over their head, or I just couldn't somehow do it because my feeling inside was like, versus when I actually felt comfortable, it was like good, dialed, done, easy, no problem. Same thing with basketball. Like there were certain situations where, like for example, I remember we had a practice where the practice like didn't matter. It was just kind of an unofficial practice because it was over Christmas break. So I guess for whatever reason that put me in the right mood to relax, and I was just fucking knocking down every shot. And even I remember even the coach and everyone was like, "Dude, where does this shit coming from?" Like, because before I couldn't hit that many shots, and even in games I was like, "Oh shit, I got the ball, I need to pass it," or like I could maybe do layups or shit from rebounds, but being in that position, I just didn't feel comfortable. So it definitely held me back in that arena, and that's something that kind of hurts. It still hurts to this day. I don't know why. I've tried to get over it, but it still definitely hurts because I know I could have been a lot better. Because it was just like if I had that feeling, it was just a completely different thing. It was like I could do whatever I wanted, and no one else really even mattered to a certain extent. But it's just I didn't feel comfortable. Partially, I was like an angry teen, so I was like mad at my parents and mad at my coach. I was like, "Yeah, fuck them," and that was a distraction. And I was too caught up with girls and chasing girls, so I was all worried about that. So I definitely lacked the focus and lacked the discipline to actually succeed. I mean, I was still good in some ways, but I could have been a lot better. Even in like track and field and cross country, I mean, I don't think I lost in track until like ninth or 10th grade. Um, in cross country, I think I could have definitely been a lot better, but it was just felt anxious, and it was just it was anxiety and like lack of self worth. It was like, oh well, this kid's better than me, and he's cooler than me, so I can't beat him. But it's like I could have easily done it. I just didn't believe in myself, and I was consumed and distracted with all those other things. Um, so it definitely held back in those arenas. And then when I played music, same fucking thing pretty much. Um, by myself or with certain people, if I felt really comfortable, like I was just could play forever. I could just improvise and come up with creative shit just all the time. And I remember a couple people that I had just would meet up with and jam. They would just be like, "Dude, you're really fucking good. Like, we're making some cool stuff that sounds good." And one guy was like, "Oh, well, come with me and like play a show at this place." So then my social anxiety kicked in. I was like, "Oh no, I don't think I can do it. Like, I'm not very good, and I just don't, I can't do it, and I don't know, I'm not good enough, and you're way better than me." And I just made up this story like, "Oh, well, you learned in school, and you're better," and just all this shit, and I just ended up not ever doing it, and it never went anywhere, and that just kind of died. So definitely social anxiety held me back in that arena. I could also probably come up with a ton of examples for opportunities I had with women that I totally shit the bed on and didn't get because I was anxious or worried about something. So I'm very. This is the thing that I think maybe people don't realize. Like all the shit I talk about that I've ever talked about in my videos, negative emotions, uh, whatever. I understand that shit very intimately well. Like, I would say the vast majority of my life, up until recent times, I existed modulating between like tons of fight or flight, stress, and anxiety, from a whole host of abusive and unhealthy things that I dealt with as a whatever in the past, and then just being angry, and being depressed. Like, so and then trying to deal with that. And that's honestly kind of what led me to where I am now, because at a certain age, I was dealing with all this shit, and I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way. There's got to be like, there's got to be something, because this sucks. Like, there's got to be a better way. And that just led through going through everything that I've been doing, and I don't think I would had been as motivated or as focused if it weren't for all of that insane pain, because I was just like, this sucks. So now I kind of just can sometimes look back, and some huge chunks of my life are just kind of a blur, because I was in such a traumatized fight or flight state. But I was also so pro at hiding it, and medicating it, and pretending it was otherwise, that maybe people didn't really realize. So when I'm making fun of so many things, whether it's Nofap or stoners or fucking psychedelics or new age people or people obsessed with money, I've been all of those things, I've done all of those things, so I understand sort of a decent amount of the causal relationships and what works and what doesn't, and why people gets into those things. Because not only did I go through those things, but I was surrounded by the people in those things as well, and in those communities and niches, so I understood their things too, and looked at it on a larger scale. So that's why it's also sometimes personally offensive and annoying when people are like, oh, you're mean, or oh, they say these like kind of offhand annoying comments. It's like, dude, I'm not. I've just been through all of this shit. I know how much it sucks, and it's like, I know people will come out and say something, and I know it's not true, and it's only gonna lead down the wrong way. But it's like, at the end of the day, that's their choice. But also, it's not mean to say, hey, that stove's hot, and if you put your hand on it, you're gonna burn it. But then for some reason in 2020 or 2019, that's mean to point that out, even if you do say it in the most straightforward way possible. I don't know, but I also don't really care at this point, and I don't typically get into those things with people anymore, because I don't really fancy myself as like a self-help guru at all. So that's, yes, I did have it, and what did I do to overcome it? I don't know. Part of it is, one thing that actually did help is, because what it comes down to is just your state. Because that's all anxiety really is. It's a certain state that your nervous system goes into. You take away all the mental nonsense and all this self-identity, that stuff all just doesn't really matter, and it's just an effect. It's not the cause. Because this is why people like drugs, this is why people like these things, because it changes their state, and they feel like a new person, because they effectively are a new person, because they change their state. So it's basically, in some ways, people are kind of getting hip to this, because the modern, hippie Xanax is like weed and yoga, but all people are doing is just stagnating their liver and like suppressing and repressing themselves, and which is just kicking the can further down the road and making themselves less healthy. People end up being like smiling depressives, and just, you can really see it, and I understand it and why people are doing it. So on one hand, it's just, honestly, I am personally sad. I find it personally sad and a little bit tragic that there aren't better options out there for people, and what is commonly available is so garbage, and typically just leads people down a worse, path than before, which is like the example I gave earlier about, oh, you have this symptom, you can just pulse this thing in your body for 5 minutes and then it's gone, versus someone who can't do that, and they just spend 20 years going through the medical system, jumping from practitioner to practitioner, never getting anywhere. Like, that's, to me, is a bit sad and a bit tragic, because that's their life, they're never getting back, and they just spent it going in a circle. And yes, it is sad, but it's also just par for the course, because I'm doing that right now with certain things, and everyone is. Like, we're all kind of stuck in these fucking patterns, um, to a certain degree. So I don't know. Hope that answers that question. I'm kind of done talking about that right now, but hopefully that gave some insight and illumination on that. Also practice. I think that's another thing. I think I was eventually just like, instead of, because it also is a choice, right? Like, let's say you come up, even in a small example, we say you come up to someone, you're checking out at the grocery store, you could go one direction, which is like no eye contact, kind of looking down, being scared, afraid, or the other one is just like kind of looking at them and actually is making small talk, and then you just do that, and eventually you realize like, oh, it's not a big deal, and then you just keep doing that, and you realize this is not a big deal, no big deal, and then you just eventually kind of get over it. But just taking kind of small steps like that to do it, and just in general getting out of your head and getting out of your own way, which is easier said than done. Oh man, there's a fucking question and thread about psychedelics in here. This is great. So it's pretty interesting. At first, the scent was super complex. Couldn't really smell the different facets. Citrus red tea, now they're rather animalic. I really like how it lasts. Put in the morning, so not wake up the next day. Yeah, I mean, that's everything you're saying is spot on, and that's just how it goes. I mean, to me, like oud and tea are like that. Like, I have to look at everything in terms of relative to where it is in time. I can't always judge it by the first go. Obviously, there are certain teas and oils that I'll smell and immediately know this is trash and it's just done. That's, I mean, I've done that. Like, I spent, even last week, I spent $200 on some oil and some wood. I got it, I immediately threw it in the trash because I could tell this is shit. It wasn't like, oh, this is over my head. It was like, no, this is fucking shit and I need to get rid of it because I'm upset that I just wasted this money. Whereas this, I got it and I'm like I'm still getting more out of it. I've had this oil for, a month or two, and I'm still getting more out of it. So that's just how it goes. And especially over time, your nose will get better. Your nose will get better for oud, but also for everything. You'll be able to smell everything better. You're in even your sensory world, and eventually your taste will probably get better too. Then as that gets better, you'll get more out of it. Then when you go back to other oils, it'll smell even different. But I will say I wouldn't say this is like a beginner oil really at all, because it's like, it is quite complicated and it's not upfront with the sweetness. Whereas the oil I had sold previously, I would say that's way more beginner oil, because anyone will smell that and be like, oh, that smells nice. Because it's like woody and honey, floral, cinnamony and spicy. It's just way more like just straight up good, whereas this is just complicated and nuanced, but once you get it, you get it. The oil is not on my website because I only have 1 or 2 bottles left. So if you want a bottle, just email and I'll send you a detailed write-up and how to order it. But basically, it's $110 for a gram. This is a 1 gram bottle. So that's what it is, $110, and that's it. I just say that because it had like 5 people email and they just never responded back. So might as well just tell you how much it is now, so you can just which, to be all honesty, it should be at least $200 per gram for the fact that it's wild and it's aged and it's from a completely extinct region. So it's really that caliber of oil. I'm just not marking it up that much because I just got some for myself and I'm trying to share it. But I will be selling more oud oils, and once my oud oils go full retail, they'll probably be like $150 per gram or more, depending on it, because some of them are quite aged. Honestly, I think the oud oil is one of the most enriching things that I've added to my life in the last year or two. Um, can also really drain your bank account, but um, it's quite good. Yeah, the thing is too is this one's been aged I think for 7 years. Um, so also the top notes are a little more subdued. Like usually if it was a much fresher distillation, you'd get much more of a bright initial hit, like it would just kind of be more in your face. But usually over time as it ages, it kind of like mellows and sinks out, and you get more of kind of the mid to bass notes, and everything kind of comes together. Whereas sometimes the newer oils, it's like the top notes are like over here, but then like the bottom notes are over here, and you got some middle notes, and it's nice, but it's not quite sort of gelled all together. So that's also why I'm like, it's not necessarily maybe a beginner oil, because beginners, you want something maybe a little more front facing and bright, but it's still a dope oil, and you know. Let's see. Oh yeah, the sandalwood I got is pretty dope. Like it a whole lot better. Then I'm putting it on. Yeah, the sandalwood's really good too. I sold out of it, and yeah, if you want to message me through the website or Facebook, because I think we've chatted on Facebook, whatever, just send me a message. And I got 1 or 2 bottles left actually, so you can get it. And I'll send you some samples of other stuff too. Oh, I sent you potent sativa. I sent you some sandalwood as well. But the sandalwood I sent you as a sample is not the sandalwood that's on the website. The sandalwood that's on the website that's sold out is Mysore sandalwood from India. That's been aged for quite a while now. Whereas the one I sent you in a sample is a wild sandalwood from Sri Lanka, which I will also be selling. Oh, sweet, you got both. I honestly like this. I like them both. The Mysore is like a little more citrusy and like urine-y, I guess, like a little more like pee. Whereas the Sri Lanka stuff is like almondy and creamy and sweet, and it's a little more like, I don't know, bright. I guess I have some right here. I might as well smell it. Yeah, there it is. That's just good, man. Yeah, that's just some good sandalwood. That's all that is. Man, that's nice. Yeah, bright, there you go. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I need to get, yeah, so I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So these are also new products that I have coming. So here they are. Telling you guys first. I already mentioned the Sri Lankan sandalwood oil, which is wild harvested. I'm going to be selling it at an insane price. And then I've got this Blue Lotus Absolute, which I will also be selling at an insane price. And it's actually real, whereas a lot of the stuff on there is completely fake. Or they think a Blue Lotus Absolute is like putting a drop of Blue Lotus into another oil and then calling it an Absolute, which is not what it is. Whereas this is actually an Absolute, and it's really quite strong. So this is the type of oil that you would not really need to do a swipe. You'd just be like barely touch your skin or something, and then you're good. Like that's all you need. My favorite smell is wet dirt and wet rock. Look up petrichor. Petrichor is that smell. It's basically like wet dirt. So he wanted a perfume that smelled like that. Boom. Petrichor, and then I think there's an Indian perfume that is literally smells like dirt and rain. Oh yeah, so Sandalwood Absolute, or the Blue Lotus Absolute, which is freaking insane. The Sandalwood Absolute, and then this is a Sri Lankan vetiver, which use caution because it is really thick and it will lay you out. Whenever I first got these oils, I just got the samples. It came at like 9 a.m. Via FedEx, and I had just eaten breakfast, getting my day going. And I got the oils. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to try these. I almost could not train after that because it like sedated me. I just sat down on the couch. I was like, man, these oils are good. And then before I knew it, my eyes were closed, and I was just 5-10 minutes. I'd just been sitting there. I'm like, oh shit, man, I need to get up and do some stuff. I can't just be sitting here all night. And I was like, man, can I train or should I just take a nap? And I was like, nah, I better just go ahead and train, man, to get this done. But I've given some to my friends, and I've had them put them, like, you put this on your feet when you go to bed at night. Whew, it'll just lay you out, man. And I had one of my friends actually like put some on early in the morning, and it just laid him out. I'm like, dude, I tried telling you, like, don't be careful. Use it at night. So those will be coming out soon. And those will be really, really good. And of course, insane prices. And they will last a really, really, really long time. Let me see. Do you choose the oil over incense? I use both. They're just very different. Obviously, if you want to fill a room or fill a space or do that whole thing, you would use incense, whereas the oil is much more personal. So I use both. It just kind of depends. I also heat the actual wood, which I prefer. I prefer heating the wood to incense, but they're kind of all good. They're just, different. So yeah. So I may have to go ahead and jump off of here soon. Because it's getting a bit late, and I need to eat some dinner before it gets too late here. So if you have any further final questions, go ahead and crank them out real quick while I'm still here, because I'll have to jump off quite soon. Sitting in this chair is getting a bit old, and I'm hungry. I had some Burmese food for lunch that was quite good, but now I need some more stuff. So let me see. If there is no other question, then I'll, jump off. Have I thought about sourcing frankincense? I actually have. I have really high grade sources for frankincense oil, frankincense tinctures, and frankincense resin. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. Just because honestly, it's one of those things that a lot of people sell, and it's quite common. It's kind of fairly easy to find high quality stuff, and it's like the price on it's pretty low. Because to me, at least from a business sense, the amount of work it takes for me to hustle and source a good product and sell it, and maybe I sell it for $10 because it's frankincense. It's the same amount of work it would take me to sell a product for $45 or $100. So I put in all this work, and now I make maybe $4. So it's like, like I'd rather put effort into a product that I can sell for $45, just from like a business perspective. And also just because, like I said, there's a lot of it available. It's kind of fairly easy to find high quality stuff for a low price. So it's just, I only like to sell stuff that I feel like I have something unique to add to it, or I have like a unique source, or it's worth it from a business sense. It's like, why do I want to put all this time and energy to hustle something for $5? Um, you know, but I do have sources for it, so I may get there eventually. But I do have some frankincense and myrrh products in the works right now, especially for face care and skin care and oral care, because those plants can have some really nice healing properties for those reasons. They just have to be prepared and extracted in the right way, you know? So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah, I'm working on a cleanser, or a serum, a cream, and basically a mouthwash. But we'll see. It's a work in progress because I have like 12 products in the works right now, plus a new website, plus a lot of shit. So just trying to do it conservatively and not just blast out 12 new products in a month, but kind of dripping out over the course of a year. But I got some. Oh yeah, you want to see something crazy? Are you going to repost your old videos YouTube deleted? They're all on there. If you go to my channel, all my old videos are there. When YouTube deleted my account, the whole thing went down, but then when they reinstated it, it all got reinstated. So all my old videos are on the channel. You just have to kind of go search through, but they're all there if you should desire such a thing. But yeah, I'm in the process of developing a wild cordyceps product as well. I got about 4 or 5 new herbal products in the works, which will, if I can pull it off, if I can get it all done, I will be the only person on the internet with that type of product, and probably the only person in the world, honestly. Like, I don't think there'll be any type of I don't think anyone else on the planet would have this product. So that'll be a pretty cool thing. But that's what I'm working on. Basically, by the end of this year, my company and my website will be in a very different place. Just because for a lot of years I did not add any new products or really change or do anything different. I just kind of coasted. Whereas now this year it's going to be a lot of new teas, a lot of new incense, a lot of new oils, a lot of new extracts, a lot of new just better stuff. And I also forgot to mention this. I just posted up chaga extract and cordyceps, which are now dual extracts. So they are stronger, more potent, and the same price. So yeah, there's that. And I'll be doing that soon, probably next week. I'll do the same thing for reishi. It'll be a reishi dual extract with double the triterpenes and more polysaccharides. So it'll be a stronger, better product for the same price. And then a few weeks down the line, I have a lion's mane product, which will be quite unique. But will probably be a little bit more expensive, but it'll be a lot more potent, and will actually have all the components for the nerve growth factor and cognitive enhancing effects in a much higher ratio and a much higher percentage. So that's coming soon. So just basically behind the scenes, making all the products better and keeping the prices pretty much the same. Because this is the other thing, is since I launched the website in 2010, most of the prices have been the exact same. So we're talking 10 years of inflation, and I have not raised the prices, even though my costs have gone up significantly. So yeah, that's just how it goes, though. It's life and business. So anyways, be on the lookout for all that new stuff. But anyways, I'm gonna need to wrap it up, and it's 5:55, and I need to eat dinner. Gotta cook some dinner actually at home. And of course, now my fridge kicks on. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Even though it's kind of unscripted and rambling, and it's kind of getting into it for a little bit, but hopefully it's been some value here. And the recording is going to get posted up, so in case you missed anything, it'll be back up. And it is on my list to start filming and recording and uploading YouTube videos on a regular basis. And I actually hired a video editor, so my overall production quality should go up a lot. And actually, I just realized I don't even have my mic on. That sucks. Sorry about that. The audio quality on this is not as good as it could have been because my mic is sitting over there. It's like right on the table in front of me. I just completely forgot to put on the mic. So sorry about that. Which is why I need to hire a video editor, because I'm not good at videos and tech and stuff. So basically I'm just going to film the videos in 4K and then send them to my editor, and he's going to make them nice and put in some transitions and titles and effects and shit like that, so my videos will be looking real good. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to go to the website and check out the new teas and the new herbs that are on there. And if you want the last 1 or 2 bottles of this oud oil, I would recommend checking it out anyways. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. It's been 2 hours and some change, and hope you enjoy the rest of your night wherever you are on the planet, and I will talk to you soon.